I'm going to be canning homemade pickles today, and I wanted to share my process with you. So the first thing that I always do is I try to pick my pickles early in the morning. That helps them not to be in the sun all day. That can cause them to not be as crunchy as you want them to be. I also try to pick them nice and small, so usually not bigger than your hand, nice and thin ones. So that's also helps them to be more crunchy. And then the biggest thing that has helped me to have crunchy homemade pickles is I recently learned that you need to cut the blossom end off. The blossom end has enzymes in them that when you can them will cause your cucumbers or your pickles to be mushy. And we have tried this for a couple of years now, and it makes a huge difference by cutting the blossom end off. I cannot tell you how many jars I've had in the past where I didn't do this that went untouched because no one liked them. They were super mushy. And now that I've been cutting the blossom ends off and soaking them in ice water, I open a jar of pickles and they're gone immediately. So the trick is to cut the tips off. So I end up cutting actually both ends off. I feel like the flavor gets more incorporated into the pickle when I do that. And then I soak them in ice water for at least 2 hours, and I've read that you can soak them up to 12 hours. And once the water gets warm, if I'm gonna let them sit for a really long time, I'll just dump the water out and put them back into some cold ice water. So try to let them soak for at least 2 hours, and you will be shocked at the difference that this makes. Alright, now it's time to make the brine for the pickles. So in this pot I have my water, my vinegar, salt, sugar, and my spice pack. And I'm going to just stir it really well and make sure everything gets dissolved. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this up to a boil. Alright, my cucumbers have been soaking in ice water for several hours, and I've made my brine, and that's nice and hot. And so now I'm ready to pack my jars. The first thing you're going to want to do, if you're going to do quart jars, you're going to want 2 heads of dill in each quart jar. And if you're going to do pint jar, then you'll just use 1 head of dill. So oftentimes people will put this whole thing right in the jar, but I think all the stem parts take up a lot of space. So what I usually do is I just cut those off right into the jar so I can get rid of this part. Just save some space, and I'm able to pack more cucumbers into my jars. So I'm going to go ahead and get my dill into each of my jars here. There we go. And then I really like to add some garlic to my cucumbers or my pickles. So I'm going to add probably like 2 cloves of garlic per jar. And I chop those up a little bit. If you keep them whole, you can do that, but the flavor doesn't release as well. So I like to just roughly chop those. And then the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna start with your tallest pickles or cucumbers, and you're just gonna start packing them in your jars. So I like to kind of turn my jar like this and just keep working my way around the jar and packing them in. So once I get them kind of loosely packed like this, then I will start with my smaller cucumbers and start packing those into the spaces that are in my jars. So then now I'm aiming for more of these just smaller sized ones to get in. And you want to leave about 1 inch of head space at the top of your jars. So I'm going to keep packing them in until I get them as tightly packed in here as I can. I don't want to waste any space. So keep working around the jar here. Alright, it's packed pretty tight up to the top. That jar is done. So I will keep working and pack the last 2 jars here. I have my jars packed nice and tight, so the next step is to go ahead and pour this hot brine over the top of them, and I'm going to leave 1 inch head space. The next step is to wipe down the rims of the jars really well so that they can seal properly. So once they're nice and clean, then you're going to want to take your lids. I'm going to be using the Tatler lids, which are reusable lids, but it's the same if you are using, this next step is the same as if you were using the one-time use lids. So I'm just going to go ahead and set those on top. And then I'm going to tighten down my bands. And now I'm going to place them in my canner. Now I'm over here at my stove and I have a canner here, and I'm going to place my jars inside. And I always want to make sure that the jars are at least 1 inch below the top of the water. So I need to add a little bit more water. So I'm adding water so that the jars are under the water by 1 inch. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat on, and I'm going to put the cover on top. I'm going to bring my water up to a boil. Once it reaches a gentle boil, I'm going to start my timer, and these will go for 15 minutes at a gentle boil. Alright, it's been 15 minutes, so I turned the heat off, I took the cover off, and I let them sit for 5 minutes, and now I'm going to take them out of the canner. Now because I am using the reusable Tatler lids, I have one extra step, and that is I need to crank down the bands as tight as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. If you were using the regular canning lids, you wouldn't have to do this step. Alright, that's it. Leave these on the counter for at least 12 hours. After 12 hours, you can take the bands off and make sure that they've sealed properly. I hope you guys have found this video helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below.